the new year, my friend, and this specific recording marks our 6th year of podcasting, Brad. 6 years of podcasting.
It's the beginning of our 6th year, yeah.
Oh, our 6th. I don't even know what that is in anniversaries. It's probably something dumb like, a pinned butterfly to a board or something. But okay, so I got to tell you one of my favorite New Year's stories. So remember Y2K, the Y2K bug? When back in the day, for those too young to remember, programming was a little bit more limited in space count. And so they, for a billion stupid reasons, a lot of generations of computers were coded with a 2-digit year instead of a 4-digit year. Big scare of Y2K. Everyone thought airplanes were going to be falling out of the sky. So there was, it seems quaint now in light of COVID, but this was a legitimate scare, was it not, Brad?
It was absolutely, I was working, it was one of the first couple of years I was working at the newspaper in Philadelphia, and we were doing Y2K stuff like crazy because there was permutations that just rippled and rippled and rippled. It'd be stuff that you would never think if your house has a digital radiator or a digital furnace. Your house is going to burn up because it's not going to know what to do. It was everything.
Yeah, and so people were like Brad was saying, the media really played into it because it sold a lot of papers, it moved a lot of TV ads. But people also really started to get into it on a personal level. Like preppers were stocking their basements. Some people, like my friends and I, kind of half because we were all in our 20s, but also just because we wanted to get out of town, we all went up to a cabin in the mountains for that New Year's Eve. Anyway, the week before Y2K, though, I was like, I don't know, maybe there's something to this. Maybe the computer system really will crash. And the anxiety got the better of me in the aisle of a Costco, Brad. So do you know what my one panicked Costco purchase was for Y2K? I bought 3 of the Costco shaving razor packs, which each one of those is like 100 razors. So I had 300 razors.
300 razors is what you bought? You didn't want to face the apocalypse unshaven?
I literally do not know what my brain was thinking. That I was like, I'll trade these in the wasteland. People will want to shave.
Now, here's what I want to know. How long did it take you to go through 300 razors?
I know this because I remember the final one that I used. It took me 6 years to get through all the razors that I bought for Y2K. Why of all the things? I didn't buy like dried beans. I didn't buy like storable water. I bought razor blades. Why did I buy razor blades?
Even coffee or non-perishable food. No. And by the way, if you're gonna face a post-computer technology apocalypse, you want to look a little bit unshaven. If you're walking down the street trying to hunt for food and somebody sees your shaved face, they're gonna know they can beat you up.
That's exactly what my wife said. They said that, look, she's like, every other guy would have beards at this point, and you'd be the one guy all clean shaven. They'd be like, that guy's got some hidden stock of goods. Let's get him.
You're just sticking out like a shaved thumb.
So on that note, I want to say hello, everybody. Happy New Year, and welcome to the 6th year of Comic Lab, the show about making comics
and making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his well-shaved friend, Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. I can't honestly believe that it's been 6 years. We've been doing this longer than we were in high school, longer than we were in college. Like, that's bonkers.
That makes me your frat brother.
Now, I did not join or ever have any whim to join a frat. Did you ever join a frat?
No, it was not for me. It really was not for me. At Alma College, they called us GDIs for gosh damned independence. That was our 3-letter Greek symbol, GDIs. I was not. I could, and I actually Alma College is a very small college. And the Greek system is the only kind of social life. And I was doing political cartoons for the student newspaper. And I had done, it was my freshman year, and I had done a comic that basically used the punchline, buying your friends in relation to fraternities. And I was like the most hated man on campus for about a week and a half before everybody went on to other things. It was Absolutely. I had no idea what I had just done. Like I thought it was clever wordplay. I'm like,
Sure.
that's pretty good. They'll love that. And it went over like a wet fart in church. It was the worst. Nobody was talking to me for about a week and a half until it blew over.
I got to tell you, there's nothing funnier as a cartoonist than accidentally bumping up against power structures which impact you in real life. When I was a editorial cartoonist for the San Diego Union Tribune, I did 2 a week, nothing big. I made a comic one time that made fun of the ownership of the local sports stadium, right?
Yeah.
Not knowing that the owner of the sports stadium was also the owner of the newspaper that I worked for.
Oh, no.
That had a real life impact on my week that week, Brad. I should not have run that comic.
It did. Yeah, it's so funny when all of a sudden you realize that you've stepped on the third rail in whatever community you're in. Yes. And it's like, oh, boy.
Oh, that'll wake you up. That'll wake you up. So, Brad, we got a big show for everybody today because we are going to do our predictions for 2023. Yeah. And I think it speaks to all of our shared trauma that no one's going into 2023 going, this is my year. I'm going to own this year. We're all like tentatively tiptoeing like, I hope the year is okay. I hope everything works out.
I used to say that I was staying up on New Year's Eve to ring in the new year. Now I just stay up to make sure the old one leaves.
Just get out. Just get out.
It's a completely different attitude. Let me tell you that.
You're like one of the grandmothers from the old country that has the broom at the front door on New Year's Eve. Like, get out of here, old year. Get out of here. I don't want to deal with you.
Absolutely.
So, Brad, let's jump right into it. So we've got a series of predictions. Both Brad and I have prepared independently, by the way. We didn't talk to one another about what our predictions were going to be. And so do you think, Brad, we didn't talk about this, better to go back and forth, your prediction, my prediction, your prediction, my prediction, or you want to go through all yours and then all mine?
Let's go back and forth.
That'll
be better.
Right. Good man. All right. Well, why don't you jump us in with Brad Geiger's first 2023 prediction?
I'm going to give you my first two, actually, because one of them doesn't count. I've got to disqualify myself on the first, but I got to share this with you because it was so impossibly frustrating. A few weeks ago, Go Comics went down for like 24 hours, like a long time for a site that size to be down.
Yes.
And I thought, and it's had such a bad user experience for so long. Like I always joked that it was stuck in 2004. It had a bad user experience for so long that I was like, aha. If they're down for that long, it's not like, oh, the server went down. They're making changes. And my first prediction was going to be that Go Comics was going to unveil a new user experience. They announced just a handful of days ago that they're doing exactly that. So I can't count that as my first prediction. So I'm going to go to my next prediction, which is Patreon.
Okay.
So here's what's going on. Patreon is having to step up its business. Like we've said before, they've got venture capital that needs to be paid back. And because I do think that they're run by good people, when they first made a step to try to monetize, they set out that whole tier system. So if you were a creator signing up for Patreon for the first time at a certain point, you had to pay a different set of fees and percentages than I paid because I was at what we call the founders level that had kind of the sweetheart deal of everybody. They were like, and again, out of kindness, they said, hey, you folks have been with us since the start. You're going to be at that level. Nothing's going to change. But we're going to set up for anybody coming in after this certain point. They're going to have to pay a little bit higher fees and structures.
Right.
So that, by the way, was years ago. I couldn't even tell you what year that was, although I think it was pre-COVID. So I think that puts us at 2018, 2019. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they're at the place now where they've got to start stepping it up again. And none of the things that they've unveiled really is doing the trick. We've kind of castigated merch for membership a few times. We don't need to do that again. But here's what I'm predicting they're going to do. They're going to start to try to entice us further and further away from the founders level with new features and new additions. You've already seen this start to happen with Patreon video.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
They unleashed Patreon for video. We all wanted video hosting on Patreon for years. Now they've got it. It's not. It's for safe for work only, by the way. But that's fine. I get why they have to do that. but they're unveiling Patreon hosting for videos. But you'll notice it's not for the founders level. It's for the other levels. So if you want to avail yourself of that, you've got to go to one of those other levels, which means leaving the founders level. I'm predicting that we're going to see many more rounds of that coming up. At least one or two. I don't know whether many is the right words because it's hard to unleash a new feature. They usually unveil one or two a year.
Yeah.
They're going to try increasingly to entice us away from that founders level and onto the levels where we're going to get more features that we always wanted, but we're going to pay a little bit higher percentages and everything. To be fair, I think it's an even trade. I think there's nothing wrong with that, but I do predict we're going to see it happen more and more often in 2023.
I got to tell you, that's a prediction that never occurred to me, and I think you are very right about that. I think we will find in 2023, or if nothing else, in the near years to come, that will be very true, because they kind of have to entice us all up that ladder, because frankly, a lot of the early sign-ons are the big performers. And if they can eke out another, 2 or 3% from those high earners, that's a big deal for this company.
Absolutely. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's and by the way, perfectly fair.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, I like Brad. I think this is a perfectly fair business decision. I see why they're doing it. I understand it, even though I'm not personally benefiting from it.
Right.
Is there a feature that you can imagine, Brad, that would entice cartoonists like us at the founders level to go up to the pro level?
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be better cataloging and organizing of groups of content, like chapters or storylines or comics or something like that.
So
now,
some form of archiving is what you're saying then.
That's right. That's right. And organizing. Just right now, when I get an actual complaint from an exiting patron, it is, I don't know how to find stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know how to find what I'm looking for, and I've actually set up a mirror site for like After Dark and the commissions and stuff like that, where I use the Patreon API on a WordPress site, so they can go and sign on to that site and have a hopefully a better experience. I don't know how much they pay attention. I try to mention it several times a month. I don't know how well it's working, because like I, of course, can get in any time because I've got the keys, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I've not heard that their experience is not great, but that's always in the back of your mind. So the thing that I would want in Patreon is for people to be able to find groups of content. Like I said, a storyline, a chapter, a comic, a short story. You know what I'm saying? Groups. Right now, other than those tags, which I'm aware of, but I've got the feeling that our Patreon backers are not so savvy on tags either.
Right.
I want a better reading system.
Yeah, I think that's a great first prediction, and I would be genuinely shocked if we get to the end of the year and that doesn't come to pass. So that's a really good one, Brad. Well, I'll jump in on my first prediction for this year, and this one is more about entertainment broadly and where people go to seek entertainment. I think in 2023, Brad, by the end of the year, we will see TikTok banned in the United States. And that's
a bold prediction.
That's no judgment on TikTok. It's no judgment on people that use TikTok. I just think that it's worth keeping our eye on as cartoonists, that there is possibly the most viral social media program ever created. One of the fastest growing. It grew faster than Instagram, grew faster than Facebook. I think that form of entertainment will be removed for however many 100 million, 350 million Americans by the end of the year. And what that will mean is people will be seeking out content. They'll be seeking out entertainment, because keep in mind, we'll also have the twisted burning embers of Twitter, the remnant Hulk that is Twitter. And so my thought is, if TikTok is gone and the remnants of Twitter are stumbling around, people will be looking for ways to entertain themselves, as they always have, from whatever moments they're in their life. And so without any judgment about TikTok, I think it might be, if it comes to pass, I think it will be a good moment for cartoonists for whom we've never really been able to take advantage of TikTok for the most part.
Yeah, true.
And for whom all those audiences will come looking for content, I think, in 2023.
Wow, that's interesting. You really think that somebody in American government would have the backbone to just throw the switch on TikTok and shut it right down?
Well, yes, it might not be as dramatic as I made it sound in that first sentence, but I think at the very least, it will get banned on all military and government phones, and maybe even on state level phones. And if you're a smart corporation, any corporate level issued phones, it'll be banned on that. And what'll happen after all that happens is you'll just start to have, I'm sure Facebook will feed it too. You'll have to have media stories about like, why are these things getting banned? Why is this being not allowed? Because it's to Facebook's advantage to push that story, for Insta and Facebook. So for a billion reasons that are not worth getting into, I think by the end of the year, TikTok will be banned in the US. It's already banned in India. And so we'll see if it gets banned I don't know about EU. I can't speak to EU politics, but I think it will get banned in the US.
Wow, that's great. That's a really great prediction. Now, I'm like, we had a lot of fun in the last episode seeing where we landed on this. This is going to be fun to see how this plays out. So I'll go with my second official prediction for 2023, and it's this. The new Clip Studio version that's coming out, I think, in March is going to be packed with so many new features, especially typographical features and stuff like this. I'm crossing my fingers for OpenType support, but you never know. But it's going to have so many new features and so many new bells and whistles that nobody's going to complain about that paltry subscription that they're going to be asking for, right? I mean, the subscription, it turned out to be, pennies on the dollar. Very well worth. And again, my opinion has always been you want to pay for something like that. You want it to be profitable so that they continue to support it and improve it. You want Clip Studio to be rewarded for their efforts. And if that means a little bitty subscription a month, for the amount of time I spend using that software, it's nothing. So I think they're playing it very, very smart. I think that they've held back a big version update with this in mind, and we're going to be so agog over the new features that nobody's going to peep about the subscription price.
Agog is a great word. Is that Germanic agog? What is that? What is that Viking? What is agog?
I don't know the etymology. I was just reading on Reddit an AMA from a crossword editor. And of course, they started asking them about their favorite crossword words or their most hated ones. And agog is always one that because it's such a useful combination of vowels and consonants that it always gets used.
Yeah. Agog. Agog sounds like a monster in Star Trek or something like dun, 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 dun. No, but I think you're right about that. Even as a non-CSP user, I can see it coming down the pipe in terms of how they are structuring their business, that there's going to be a bunch of new features. So I think that's a good one. So I will jump into my second prediction for the year, which is that Webtoons found so much success with their first published books, Rachel Smythe's published books of Lore Olympus, which I think there are 3 now. And I think the first 2 became New York Times bestsellers, which, as we all know, the New York Times bestseller list is a little bit wonky in terms of predictiveness, in terms of how it actually sold. But nevertheless, I think that in 2023, we will start to see an increasingly large publishing push by Webtoons for their biggest titles. And I think that's a big deal because it is not often in the United States that a new entrant jumps into the publishing market for comics, I mean, the last entrance, Brad, if we're honest about it, was probably Boom Studios or first, what was it, Top Cow, or you know what, in a generous inclusion, I think also Spike's very awesome Iron Circus is a new entrant if you look at it that way. But in terms of big corporate pushes, I think this is an interesting and worthwhile thing to keep an eye on, that Webtoons is going to be publishing much more in 2023.
Wow, and now Rachel Smythe has it. Doesn't she have the Lore Olympus? There's a live action or if there's something TV related or movie related. Boy, I really nailed this topic, didn't I? let's just start. Let's just say I think Rachel Smythe is doing something I'm really jealous of, and it involves TV or movie somehow. That's going to be a big push as
Although
well.
I will say
right?
this, no, unrelated to any of our predictions about comics for 2023, because my wife is in TV, I'll tell you this. Any and every option that you heard about for a property in the last year and a half that was, quote, in development, there is a 50% chance that it's not existing right now, because there is such a dieback right now in projects in development at Netflix and at all these different streamers. So so I don't know if it's still in development, but yeah, all great success to Rachel Smythe, because that title is doing gangbusters, and I think we'll see more of it in 2023 from Webtoons.
Absolutely. So we've got Clip Studio, we've got Webtoons. That means, you know what? I think this is kind of a gimme, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. I think Twitter is going to continue a slow fade or a complete crumble that will continue until Musk leaves the position of CEO or just outright declares bankruptcy. As this happens, Musk will continue to frantically implement new features at random, hoping one of them sticks. They will all fail. By the way, that's what's called shooting fish in a barrel for a prediction. And as we just saw this weekend, as this is the weekend that we're recording this. Twitter on a Friday had said that they're not going to allow you to even use the name of any other social media. If you put a link to Instagram, your account's going to be suspended by Sunday afternoon. That tweet and those terms of service changes were gone, deleted, disappeared, and missing. And it's just, they're literally flailing over there. They're just like a drowning person grabbing for a dinghy. They are absolutely in over their heads. So I'm just going to take an opportunity to improve our average at the end of next year with one that I know is very confident that this one's going to come true. It's going to continue to fade. And remember, I know it seems impossible if you're under the age of 40, if you don't remember MySpace, there was a time that MySpace was ubiquitous.
Owned the market.
Yes.
Yeah.
They had they were basically, AOL was the first group that really cornered the market. Then it atomized, and then MySpace congregated it and rehomogenized it. Every news story had a MySpace. Every celebrity had a MySpace. It was that you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a MySpace URL, right?
No, you're right.
So there was a time that it was ubiquitous and it could never fail. And if you roll your eyes every time Dave and I talking about the Twitter fade and the Twitter crumbler, here's the deal. We've seen it happen. We know that it can happen. And right now, the decisions they're making and the money they're losing, especially we're at the tail end of December, all that ad money they've missed out on. Right. We're at the beginning of Q1 2023, where all those buying decisions are being made. Those buying decisions are being made right now, and nobody's deciding on Twitter. I guarantee it with the stuff that this guy is doing. The only thing I'm a little bit upset about is he's doing this stuff like there's a poll. Yeah, depending on this poll, I'll step down as Twitter CEO. Well, here's the deal. Right now, what he needs to do is show traffic. And one thing he's gotten very good at is doing this, what I would call ship posting, driving a lot of traffic, because all of a sudden everybody is going, oh, look at what he's doing now. Look at what he's doing now. And you see people posting and talking and doing. I'm telling you, stop it. Stop feeding this guy. He's flailing. He's failing. Take it off your phone. Do what I do 1 or 2 times. I check in on desktop. I schedule my posts. I'm telling you, I've never been happier. And when he's out there, doing all this stuff that's trying to generate traffic from people saying, look at what the, horrible thing this guy's doing. I'm not participating in that. I would just assume see this thing come to a quick end. I ain't participating. But whether I participate or not, Twitter, I think, is going to crumble unless there's a big change, like if he actually does step away as CEO and they bring in a figurehead to come in and pretend to make decisions and pretend that Musk is not involved in those decisions.
Yep.
One way or another, I think we're going to see the slow fade and the eventual replacement of Twitter by something else.
Yeah, I this is my shocked Pikachu face at that prediction, Brad, because it's so clear what's going to happen. I personally would prefer him to just get it over with and either sell the remnants of it to either Peter Thiel or Google or the Emir Dubai or somebody who's already invested in Twitter and has skin in the game. And even though I don't like any of those necessarily, it's better than Musk at this point. I should also say, just a shout out to corporate governance that even if you don't like them, they're competent. So I would include Patreon in that account, because even if you don't like the corporate governance of Patreon, they're competent. And so at this point, I'll take that over a lot of other potential billionaires owning Patreon and Kickstarter and the like as well. Kickstarter's made some dubious choices, but anyway, I'm settling for just competent at this point. Not even good people, just competent. But let me jump into my third prediction for this year, Brad, which is on DC Comics specifically, not on Marvel Comics, on DC Comics. In 2023, I predict that it's going to go one of two ways for DC Comics. It's either going to go stumblingly bad or truly, truly, truly horrendous. So the backstory here is that the Warner Brothers Discovery merger has been cost-cutting like mad since their April 22 merger. And if I remember correctly, they need to cut something like $50 billion. And so they literally burned things like the Batgirl movie, which was already done in post-production. I had friends that had to go watch it in a parking lot before they destroyed the tapes, because to take the tax write-off, you literally have to destroy it. Wow. They got rid of Westworld on HBO Max. They're getting rid of shows left and right because for the tax write-off to work, they have to get rid of products, right? And so I think they may or may not decide to just stop DC Comics entirely, which would be the horrendously bad thing for DC Comics. They might just say, look, we've got the IP. We don't need what's new in the world of Batman. You know, like these piddling sales are a rounding error for our WB Discovery money. So that's one option, but I don't think that's likely. What I think is more likely is that the numbers for print DC Comics are so small in the corporate world that is Warner Brothers Discovery that it's basically going to be forgotten, not cut. But that also means that it's going to kind of die on the vine. There's not going to be any new money or supporting money or like, hey, let's build this up kind of money, because they'll allow it to live, but they won't give it any support, which I think is the more likely of the two options for DC Comics. So not Marvel, DC specifically, I think is in a world of hurt for 2023. What do you think about that one, Brad?
Oh, I agree. And I mean, I've been predicting this one for a while, and I obviously haven't made my prediction true, but I've been really expecting floppies in general to just disappear at some point. I thought it was going to happen over COVID for sure.
I really did too. I really did too.
Floppy comics, we're just going to completely disappear, and they were just going to concentrate on graphic novels. It was going to be, I thought they were going to move at this point to a new European style of publishing, where you waited for maybe 3 months and a new Batman graphic novel hit the stands or something like that, instead of doing this whole thing where you're printing floppies every month and then you're collecting the floppies into graphic novels.
Yes.
I can't imagine where that's a big moneymaker for them. And I mean, maybe we're finally getting to that tipping point, and DC will lead the way in that regard, because they won't stop publishing entirely, but they will. They're going to hit a wall at some point, and maybe this will finally be the end of floppies. I think it's and that'll make me sad because I like floppies, but I think realistically, I think it was on the horizon for a long time.
Yeah, and I think really the only saving grace, and this is what's kind of sad about it, the only saving grace for print DC Comics at this point is that the numbers are so small compared to the corporate overall hierarchy. So I'm going to throw a number out of the hat here. Let's say it takes $40,000 to make an issue of Batman, right? That is a residual rounding error for the makeup artist that worked on a Batman movie. Like they don't care about. And so what I'm saying is that it might survive just because the numbers are so small that they're like, that's fine. Maybe we'll get one hit out of it a couple years from now. Let's let it live. So anyway, but I don't see any bright shining future for print DC Comics in the next year. I think it's going to be a pretty bad year for DC Comics. Anyway, what is your next prediction, Brad? Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
So, Dave, my fourth prediction, it actually is an offshoot of my third prediction, but I want to make it out there because I've been telling them in the Discord server over and over and over, and they just won't listen to me. But my God, by next year, I'm going to remind you that I said it now. By November 2023, virtually no one will be using Mastodon regularly. And certainly not non-ironically. No one is going to be using Mastodon by, I'm going to say, next summer. It's not going to take more than summer for this thing to peter out completely. I'm telling you guys, Mastodon ain't it. And we're all trying to wave the flag for Mastodon. Be realistic. I'm telling you, I've been posting over there. It's not happening. And by July, everybody else is going to realize that too. Also, in July of 2023, the co-host registration that I submitted in November 2022 will finally be approved. So there's two predictions.
That's a twofer in one. Yeah.
No one's going to be using Mastodon, especially not non-ironically. And I'll finally get a registration back from co-host, both to happen in summer of 2023.
Yeah, and keep in mind that that's not necessarily a judgment about Mastodon. It's a judgment about marketing and perceived marketing, about difficult and difficulty. And in the same way that like VHS shouldn't have beat out Betamax, but it did because it won out on marketing and won out on perceived price and sales and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so what I'm saying is Mastodon, it's not necessarily Brad judging Mastodon, although maybe it is. It's him saying like, look, he's been in this long enough to know that when there are too many hurdles for someone to jump in, or people go to a website and they're instantly confused, it's not going to take off. So I would actually co-sign on this one, unless there is a significant revision in how the onboarding process works, because they could simplify it, They could automatically assign people to servers. They could explain it in like a cute little video that bada boom, here's how it works. And so maybe with a little bit more time and effort and money, it'll get there. But I think like Brad, I think it's there's a couple of them that I think they're just not meant to be. No. And you can feel my readers and Brad's readers and your readers being like, hey, you should go to post.news, Mastodon, and this, that, and the Hive. And sure, one of them might take off. I can absolutely agree that one of them might take off. And I'm happy to admit that I'll be wrong. I don't think we've seen it yet, because we might even be moving to a somewhat post-social media age, which is not one of my predictions, but we'll talk about that in the weeks to come.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dave, what's your next prediction for 2023?
So my prediction, we've had a lot of focus on AI art, but I actually want to talk about GPT 3.5 and Chat GPT. People who are patrons of this show know that from time to time, Brad and I do what's called a writer's room in our ProTips episode. Every week we record a separate episode for our Patreon backers, which, by the way, you should join us on patreon.com/comiclab. But we record a room called a writer's room, where Brad and I help one another pitch and then upsell and then revise and make shine our jokes or our writing for that week. And it's a wonderful process because you can see how the back and forth makes an idea better, right? And so my prediction for 2023 is that, separate from the focus on AI art, I think cartoonists and writers, we're going to start to see them use Chat GPT or GPT 3.5 or their successors, not to write their comics, but to workshop and brainstorm their comics. Because it's like having someone in the room with you. It's another entity in the room working the problem with you. They're not good yet. They're not great. Sometimes the responses are bonkers, but sometimes just getting out of the cyclical thoughts that you have in terms of joke development can help you shake loose a different idea. So I'm not saying they're doing the writing for you. In fact, the limited things that I've tried with it, it's actually the opposite. The ideas are terrible. Yeah. But sometimes in the way like a 4-year-old can run into a room, say something, and it triggers a whole line of jokes. Not from the 4-year-old, but from the adults in the room. Right. That's kind of how I found AI to be. Sometimes the ideas are bonkers, but sometimes the bonkers idea triggers a whole train of thought that leads to the better joke. So I think in 2023, we're going to start to see human writers and cartoonists using Chat GPT and GPT 3.5 or their successors to start to brainstorm.
Interesting. Well, we can continue talking about this topic because my next prediction, like we said, we didn't compare notes at the beginning of doing this. That's actually my prediction, but mine takes a different turn and a little bit of a twist. Listen to this. In 2023, we will see the first regularly produced webcomic that uses both AI writing and AI art, and it will be disturbingly good. It's going to be better than we want it to be. It's probably going to be a humor comic. It's probably going to get a lot of mileage over LOL, that's so random kind of stuff. Right? You know that's what it's going to be. It's going to get a lot of random humor laughs, but it's going to get a lot of attention, and it's going to make a lot of fans. It's going to make a lot of us upset. And as a result, many cartoonists and many comics artists will begin using AI in their writing and or in their art, but most of them will do it in secret because they're not going to want to take the backlash that goes along with that from the artist community and the writing community. And with good reason, we're gonna see a big explosion in use. And when this webcomic gets very popular, as I kind of think it will, all of a sudden a bunch of us are gonna be like, well, maybe I got to start using it to stay competitive. Maybe I should rethink this. And I think a bunch of people are going to start using it, but they ain't going to say nothing about it. They're going to keep it quiet.
Well, I'll be honest, as someone who has tried both Chat GPT and visual generative art, just to see what it can do, is I don't claim to be a good artist, but I'm after 26 years or so of drawing, I think I'm okay. And so I'm not asking it to draw for me. I'm not asking it to write for me. I just find it interesting and fun to see what it can do. So I will absolutely admit to sort of dipping a toe in to see what it could do, because I think it's fun and interesting. But I also admit that the flip side of me is horrified, because we're all going to lose our jobs in 20 years. I thought it was going to be the menial tasks of travel would be booked by an AI. I didn't know that it would be the creative stuff that would go first. So I'm a little bit thrown off guard. So yes, I have the side that's both fascinated and interesting to use it like a tool in my process. But then I have the other side of my personality, which this is the beginning of the Butlerian Jihad from Dune. This is where AI goes wrong. We're going to, Brad doesn't know the Dune reference. So I have to, that's just a big anti-AI thing in Dune. Anyway, so I go both ways on it, but I can see you're right, Brad. Someone will try to do it. There's already been a kid's book that got marketed. I don't know if you saw it. Yeah, it was written entirely by AI and drawn entirely by AI. And
by the way, supposedly, right? I mean, I don't know this person from Adam. But it's also one of those things that if we found out later on that he changed a sentence here and he had changed a sentence there, right? Because he's saying written by AI. That tells you that what I assume there is completely written by AI. I've got to assume that he had to do a little editing here, a little editing there, a sentence, a passage, maybe a complete overwrite of a page. You don't know. So I'm a little bit skeptical about that. But yeah, I know we've already seen it happening, and it's just going to go bonkers from there. Now, we got to pause here just for a second. Neither Dave and I don't think are pro AI in any regard. We're really pragmatic. No. We're pragmatic. We're keeping an eye on it. We need to talk about it. We need to stay informed about it. But I'm not exactly rushing out the door to do AI art or writing. But I think it's something that we're going to have to keep talking about and keep our eye on, because it ain't going to go away. Technology never goes backwards.
No. And your post on Instagram with AI in the little Ghostbuster circle with the line through it, that's not going to stop it. Because the problem here, as with a lot of things in modern society, is it's not necessarily the technology that's inherently bad. It's sort of the capitalist bros behind it that are the bad ones, if you look at it. And so I don't necessarily have a problem with generative art as per se, but I do have a problem with them accessing databases that are basically lifting without permission thousands and thousands of artists and photographs and personal stuff. So anyway, but I guess what I'm saying, like Brad, is I have sort of a pragmatic wait and see approach with this, and that I'm going to dip a toe in it to see what it can do. But I also could see myself completely hating its existence. But at the moment, I think it's kind of the Wild West days. So that leads me into Brad, my next prediction, which is that we are in the Wild West days for AI, right? And it took a while for copyright law to catch up when photos arrived, if you remember. It took a while. In fact, it's still kind of catching up. It took a while for copyright law to catch up when the internet arrived. And we can all argue that it's still catching up. It's not really there yet. So right now, where we are right now with AI art, it's going to take 5 to 10 years for copyright law to catch up. It just takes a while for case law to build, right? So my prediction is for 2023, creative corporations will start to bump up against AI in copyright cases by the end of 2023. And that's a good thing. In this case, I say, let them fight. Let them fight.
Yes.
We as artists, as individual artists, we need copyright case law on generative AI. And toward the very end of 2023, we might start getting cases filed from companies like Disney or EA or Bandai or Nintendo or WB or Pokemon or Lego or Mattel or similar. And frankly, you need those corporate lawyers to fight, not because they're fighting on our behalf. They are not. We know that to be true, but because sometimes the crumbs will benefit us, right? Sometimes those copyright crumbs will benefit the little artists. So my next prediction is that by the end of 2023, we will start to get our first cases filed for generative AI from corporate creative companies that will start to establish copyright law about AI generative art.
Oh, I agree. I agree 110%. And by the way, I agree. Let them fight. And we all know it's probably going to be Disney, although there's a couple others that could actually throw their weight around. But Disney has the reputation, the long-standing reputation of being very, very protective of their copyright and trademark ownership, and they're going to have the capital to put behind protecting that. And when they see their stuff starting to pop up in other work that gets published, they're gonna weigh in. They're gonna absolutely start to throw a cooling effect on this stuff. And as soon as they start to sue some of these people who created the software that made that happen, because right now everybody's like, well, wait, you can't assign it a copyright because it's a machine, it's not a person. Well, yeah, but you know who you can. So you can't go after the software, but you can go after the people that created the software that allowed this to happen and didn't put certain protections into place. And that's exactly who they're going to go after. And they're going to make life hard on those folks for better, for worse, right or wrong. I don't have a horse in that race so much. So I don't have a value judgment there, but I do think it's going to happen. And when that happens, it's going to establish some legal framework that the rest of us will probably find address a lot of our concerns to begin, not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah. And just a fun reminder, since it's the new year and every new year brings a bunch of new stuff into the public domain, which, by the way, we're getting close to the jazz era. And I'm so excited for all that jazz music to become public domain. But I think if my memory serves, Brad, we are 5 years away from Steamboat Willie going into the public domain. Not Mickey Mouse, but Steamboat Willie. And that's going to be exciting to see if that's allowed to happen. I don't know if Disney's lawyers are going to find some way to get, like Sonny Bono did, some measure through the House and the Senate again. We'll see. But right as of right now, 5 years away from Steamboat Willie in the public domain, which is curious.
So, Dave, I'm gonna come to my last prediction of the year, and because this just popped into my head. I don't know why, but I really believe this is going to happen. So NFTs, with a couple of like bizarre exceptions, NFTs have kind of settled right out. And we haven't heard the word blockchain mentioned in months. At least I haven't. Like, you don't hear people talking about blockchain so much. You certainly don't hear people talk about NFTs. That whole thing kind of settled right out. But again, what we just got done saying is technology never disappears. My prediction for 2023 is sometime in the fall of next year, after a good long year of nobody paying attention to this stuff, blockchain is going to reappear. It's going to be called something else. It's going to be, because blockchain, I still think, is a toxic brand, just like I feel the same thing about NFTs. But blockchain as a thing, as a software component, blockchain is going to come back. It's either going to get updated, a new coat of paint, maybe some fixes to it, maybe some ways to address some people's concerns about it. It's going to get a new marketing push behind it. And we're going to be right back where we started a few months ago with this whole blockchain thing, trying to determine whether it's safe, whether it's a good thing, whether it's harmful to the environment, all of those things, all those conversations. Get ready. They're all coming back. It's just going to be when they try to relaunch this thing with a new coat of paint.
So you're predicting that for fall of 23? Is that right?
Fall of 2023, yes.
That's it. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily fight that, because I think we have at least 6 to 9 more months in 2023 of crypto completely falling apart in the sort of 17th century Dutch tulip mania that we're experiencing with crypto in terms of the falling apart aspect of the tulip mania. And so, yeah, I could see that. I mean, because again, it goes back to the real enemy here is capitalist bros. Like the fundamental technology of blockchain has interesting uses. The constant server farms are not great, but it does have interesting implementations. It's just that capitalist bros got a handle on it, and then it went into a 17th century tulip mania. So you're right that with a little bit of marketing finesse and a little bit of renaming and rebranding and a little spit shine, maybe you're right. Something would happen at the end of 2023. I have no skin in that game, but yeah, you might be right about that one.
I think it's coming back. So Dave, what's your next prediction for 2023?
So my next prediction for 2023 is back to generative AI again, because we're all focused on, it's replacing artists. It's going to replace artists. And I continue to think there will be many type of positions that it will replace. In the same way, Brad, you came from a newspaper tradition. There were a whole generation of paste up artists, and it wasn't art, right? Of like doing physical paste up of newspapers. All of that went away when computer aided newspaper and page design, like with Quark Express, and then with InDesign came along. So an entire generations of newspaper paste up artists were removed from the process, right?
Yes.
I think there's entire swaths of artists that will just be removed from the process. People that normally would have been hired by the local car dealership to do some kind of ad for a 4th of July sale, now they're just going to hire AI to do it, right? I think entire swaths of artists will be replaced. And we can all agree that is heartbreaking, because in some respects, a lot of those artists will be us. So, but I think we're forgetting that this is moving so fast. I think in 2023, we're going to move from static generative AI to motion generative AI. And so we're going to start seeing people drawing 30, 40, 50 keyframes, and you'll suddenly have a 10-minute animated movie based off of those keyframes that AI filled in the blanks and animated the rest of the movie. Or you're going to have a video game where you'll design key aspects of the level, and then the generative AI will design the rest of the level based on whatever key aspects you've laid out in your static images. So I see that coming in 2023. It's not, what I'm getting at is, it's not just static image artists that are in trouble. We're going to see animation get into trouble with entire jobs in tweening that are currently being done in South Korea and India. We're going to see entire jobs in video game design that are just completely replaced by AI because it is cheaper, faster, and easier.
Wow. Yeah. I had never thought of keyframing for animation, but once you said it, my head spun around, because you're absolutely right. And it's in that regard, it's going to become, it's going to lower the bar for animation for a lot of us, because we may not know how to do those in between illustrations, but we could keyframe certain key points and then have an AI go in and do the rest. It's going to lower the bar for animation for a lot of people. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But It's absolutely going to make it attainable, whereas animation used to be very difficult, very expensive to do that because of all of that. You're going to see a big animation explosion probably when that starts to happen.
Well, someone, let's just say Brad Geiger, who has no animation experience, I could see a world 3 years from now where you could make an Evil Inc. Animated short, just using AI and 40, 50 keyframes and a couple of key poses and certain mouth movements. So yeah, this is, again, not a value judgment. I'm just saying this is coming and we should see it coming because, again, entire swaths of artists are going to be replaced by this. So so that's my next. And then was that your last prediction, Brad?
That was I am all out of predictions. I am predictionless as of now.
So I have one last one, and this one maybe is a little too close to home and wishful thinking, but I think physical in 2023 and 2024 and 2025, physical original art will have a new foothold to stand on as AI comes to dominate all digital spaces, and it will. So where am I coming with from this? Well, Drive is drawn digitally. I'm very happy about that, right? I love drawing digitally. I have no physical art for Drive to sell. Sheldon, each one is drawn on physical paper with physical pen. Each one I can sell. I think in the years to come, that will have a new importance and foothold for me that it didn't in the past, because AI will come to dominate all digitally created art. So at some point, physically created art will have a newfound importance to commerce and human existence in a way that it always did, but I think it's going to be more clear now. I don't know. Is that making sense as a prediction, Brad? Yeah.
In other words, you're saying original art is going to start to become more valuable. It's going to become more special than it even is now. It's going to become. It's going to have higher value if you are working analog. If you're working traditionally, that's going to be important to you because those can be merchandise items. They can be Patreon rewards if you decide to do that. That can be a lot of stuff that you can rely on because it's going to be harder to find that in the real world.
I guess what I'm saying is anytime anything is digital 5 years from now, someone's going to be like, okay, but what percentage of that was AI? And you'll be like, no, I drew the whole thing myself. They'll be like, all right, sure you did. What percentage of that is AI? And you'll be like, no, honest to God, I spent 10 hours on this. I drew the whole thing myself. All right, whatever. Because all the teens and tweens, they'll be using AI in their process, right? Everyone from our generation will sort of be the last people that make something start to finish on their own. And so with a physical piece of art, there's no way that AI had a process in that or hand in that process. You drew that thing. And so I think going forward, physical art will have a new wrinkle to it that it didn't have before, which is, holy shit, this guy can really draw, or this woman really created that. She didn't use AI at all in this, whereas it will always be suspicious in a purely digital realm of how much AI did you use when we're in 2028.
Yeah. So, I mean, we covered a lot of bases here with our predictions. I mean, we've talked about a lot of stuff that we foresee coming, but a lot of it has to do with how AI writing and art and now animation is going to change a lot of things that we took for granted as creators as always being there, right? It's going to just be a topsy-turvy kind of thing because AI is going to have a big effect on it.
Yep.
There's only one thing, Dave. There's only one thing that they haven't figured out how to do with this AI. They haven't figured out how to do an amazing podcast for 5 years, going on their 6th year, with two guys that just love to talk comics. They can't do that with AI. They can't touch that with AI, right?
No, they cannot touch it. And I want to say genuinely, as we go into our 6th year, thank you for doing this with me. It has been a damn delight to do this podcast with you, to talk comics, my favorite topic to talk about. I love talking comics with you. And it was, especially during the pandemic, it was a lifeline to me in terms of mental health and just taking a weight off my heart. So as we go into our 6th year, thank you for 6 wonderful years. This has been a delight to do with you.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. There may be any number of things that may finally give me trouble in the new year. I might have a bad knee. I might have, I might have any number of problems. One thing I know that I'm never going to have a problem. My heart's always going to be fine because I come into this podcast and it just makes my heart happy to sit here and talk comics with you and BS the way we do. It's been great. It's been a great 5 years. I'm looking forward to a fantastic sixth and another year of being able to say that you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my wonderful, wonderful friend, Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And his wonderful friend, Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode.
And as we go into the new year, let me tell you that Comic Lab is made possible, and this is the truth, by your support on patreon.com/Comic Lab. So I'll go ahead and say that twice, patreon.com/Comic Lab.